Hey guys, I've got a tough travel schedule this week given the Bulwark's live shows in both Chicago and Nashville. Hope to see some of you there. So instead of doing a full show, we're going to bring you guys some raw audio this week. This is sometimes people love it. They're like, yeah, Sarah, get out of here. We just want to listen to the voters. So every now and then we do that. And we're going to talk about Joe Biden, fair warning, because, things being what they are, the recent focus on Joe Biden's decline while he was in the White House and whether or not some people were sort of keeping that out of view, we decided to talk to Democrats about what they thought about Joe Biden getting out of the race. These are people who like Joe Biden, but I think you'll be interested in what they have to say. But if you're sick of hearing about Joe Biden and how with it he was, just hear me out. We tried to talk about this with an eye toward how it will or will not affect Democratic voters' decision-making in the future. I think you'll also find the rank and file voters had a more nuanced view of this than many of the people you hear on the internet. I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions about these folks, but I thought we had, I thought we got a good feel for which parts of the Biden story will and will not matter in the coming years. Enjoy the show. We'll be back next week to kick off June with some interesting Democratic primaries. They're around the corner. You're not going to want to miss it. Talk soon, guys.
Raise your hand if you've heard about a new book that's out. It's Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson talking about Biden's time in office, his mental decline while he was in office. Raise your hand if you've heard anything about this book. Keep them up for me, just so I can get a quick.
I might have heard a little bit, but I don't know the title.
Okay, so about 6 people. For those of you who have heard a few things, anybody just want to raise a hand, tell me some of the things they've heard that they can remember, any headlines or excerpts, or do you have one?
Really, the only thing I've heard about it is that Tapper claims that people in the administration, actively tried to hide Biden's decline from the public. And that's really all I've heard about it.
How about you?
I heard a discussion the other morning on the way to work on NPR about the book. And I find it all completely plausible. I'm seeing a lot of stuff online where people are trying to discredit Tapper and say he's terrible for saying this stuff. And, I have an emotional response to some of the cartoons and memes, because I feel bad for Biden, right? The one that you see a lot of where all the terrible stuff that's happened to Biden and then he's holding up the cancer diagnosis and he's like, I've been through worse. That jives with me, right? But that's purely emotional. In my mind, it's obvious what was happening to him. I haven't read the book, but I fully believe the general assertions that Biden was falling apart and that they knew.
Okay. So I want to dig into that a little bit. But before we do, let's take a quick step back. So pretty much everybody here, the turning point for kind of knowing that Biden shouldn't be the nominee was the debate. Some of you pretty directly said it was his mental acuity. It was how feeble he looked. Some of you said that it was more of his performance and how he stumbled around some words and wasn't as strong with Trump. Raise your hand if you do think it was mostly mental acuity that you were alluding to. Not as quick, felt like something was off. 4, 5. Okay, so about 6 out of 8. Because, the whole time, or for a while now, we've been living with this characterization that he has had this mental decline for quite a while. We're kind of getting more nuanced about it now. Everybody here has thought that some of it is legitimate, but I'm trying to tease out how much do you think is exaggerated and how much do you think is legitimate? Does anybody have? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think much of it is exaggerated. And my point in saying that is that I attribute it to someone in their later years. And I think that's a fairly normal behavior. Just as Trump saying the crazy, dumbest things, it's not the same thing, but it's on the same level. It's someone entering their later stages in life that may have, trouble communicating as we will on a normal day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to speak to the point about the perception?
Yeah. First of all, yeah, I agree. At his age, he's not going to speak as swiftly, and he's going to mix up names, BB versus CC, and that sort of thing. But that doesn't mean he doesn't know. My goodness, he's forgotten more about international diplomacy than Trump will ever have in his little finger. I'm so sure of it. I think they sensed it was not going to go well, but just because he can't move swiftly, just because he doesn't think as quickly on his feet, a lot of folks are not aware of what governing the country entails. And I think he was probably a little more capable of making decisions. I mean, all the president really does is he or she is presented data. Do you want to do this or do you want to do that? Mm-hmm. And based on all of their knowledge of the country, I think they decide things. All he has to do is sit in the Oval Office. He doesn't have to push the furniture around it.
Does anybody else care to speak to the perception of his mental decline versus how you actually felt about his mental decline? Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I will say that I agree that the president can be mentally incapacitated, and if they are more than a couple weeks into their term, then their team should be able to handle everything. And so even a president that's failing should be competent to be a president because everything's in place, right? But if electability is even a factor, then stumbling through basic words and sentences, that's enough. It's enough. For me, anyway, that's my opinion.
There's a new book out by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. It's mostly about his time in office and his mental decline while in office. Who's heard some things about it? Maybe heard some excerpts? Like 5 out of 8. Anybody who's heard a little something, just want to pop your hand up and tell me what you've heard. What have you heard?
I just heard like a little blurb about it. It just kind of made me upset because look at what we're dealing with now. He's clearly crazier than a road lizard, and everybody's just acting like everything's normal. Mm-hmm. It kind of hurts my heart that they did that to Biden because, I mean, he did what he could with what he could work with. He really tried.
Mm-hmm. I want to go around one more time, and I want to just touch on Biden's mental faculties while he was in office. I'm curious, how much of the chatter that has gone on for a bit do you think is legitimate? How much do you think is overblown? Kind of where do you come down on how you think he was when he was in office? If there was like a turning point for you, anything like that?
Yeah, so I paid pretty close attention to it. I'd watch YouTube videos where people were kind of making fun of Biden. And so I'd look at it closely and I could see where they were coming from. I think the turning point was when he did that debate with Trump. It was pretty clear that something wasn't right. And my mom and my grandparents both had dementia. So I don't think he's got a lot of time. So I was pretty concerned with keeping him as the front runner for the Democrats.
Okay. Tell me how you've thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It was kind of the debate that kind of shocked me into the fact that, yeah, we need an alternative. I fully supported Kamala. Really, probably would have supported anything, even a ham sandwich versus Trump. But yeah, it kind of was an eye opener for me, just to see how badly off he was as far as his speech and whatnot. But it's weird because there were times, afterwards he was crystal clear about things, so it was really kind of confusing, but I knew in the end it was probably the best choice to support another candidate. Mm-hmm. And I was definitely going to support a Democrat because we have such a deep field of Democratic candidates even now. So.
Mm-hmm. And how have you thought about his mental faculties over time? And did that impact at all how you thought about him withdrawing?
I don't know, because I know they were saying that he had a speech impediment anyway with the way he was talking. At first, I thought it was just maybe he just had a bad night, but there was something going on with him.
When the debate happened, I was really, really shocked and scared all in one. But I said something's wrong with him. And then, as I started following him and paying a little bit more attention to him, then I thought about it. Okay, I don't know if you guys remember, but he's been in office a very, very long time. And he was sick and had a major surgery in the brain, if I'm not mistaken. years ago. And he was away from the office. And I said, oh my God, I said, do you think that whatever was going on with him then has now age is catching up and all of that is coming to play out? Because sometimes it might play out slow, in which in this case it was, because he came back full alignment. And then all of a sudden he hit a certain age and then pew, it just went straight downhill fast. And I was thinking to myself, I said, oh wow. I said, this is what's going on. But I thought it was going to be okay, really. But then as it progressed, I just was noticing different things. And I thought to myself, I said, oh boy. I said, I wonder if he's going to be okay to run. I actually thought that he was going to. I thought that what they were going to do is they was going to put him only in certain places and let Kamala do the majority of the running. Mm-hmm. But it didn't work out like that. He dropped out, and then, which I'm glad he did, but I just wish he would have done it a little sooner, a lot sooner. Because I think it would have truly made a difference. She prepared as best as she could with the little time that she had. And then when the whole thing with that book that came up, I was pissed. I couldn't believe Jack Taper. I couldn't believe it.
My heart broke for him, watching him be mocked, and I've really felt for him. I worried about his health, and now there is grave concern for his health. I was happy when he dropped out, but not just because of the cognitive decline, but because I was so excited about Kamala. And I really, really thought we stood a chance with her and Tim Walz. I was just so excited and could feel the energy come back into the party. And I thought he did the right thing, although it must have been really hard. I'm glad that he did.
Okay, so I mean, the debate, I knew he did bad, but I was thinking that he was just having an off day because I saw things where he spoke where he was totally fine afterwards. So I just assumed that, he was having a bad day and he was like up and down. And I was concerned though about the decline of his health because I noticed that he wasn't walking well, like when he would go to Air Force One. So I thought it was just his age that he was having issues with. I had no clue to how terrible his health actually was. But I feel like he's a genuinely caring person and he really cared about all the citizens of the United States, which is why I didn't want to see him get out of the race because I felt like he really cared about everyone and genuinely. So I was really sad about that.
He should have gotten out earlier. If you take a look at all the articles that are, coming out now, I haven't seen a lot of the facts behind the timing and all that kind of stuff. But you have to look at the man and say, geez, this guy did a tremendous job for 4 years. He led one of the biggest economic recoveries. So he had a good team around him, which was great. And they got the job done and they put us in a great position. And now all that's being taken down. But from his perspective, he was a great leader. He was, a person who was always had a high level of integrity and stuff like that. And if you remember, he was only supposed to be a one-term president, right, when he was elected. So I think the Democrats missed a huge opportunity to actually promote a lot of the really great people that are on the bench, like Kamala, like Shapiro, like Tim Walz, et cetera, and perhaps lost a good opportunity to win that election. But I don't blame it as much on Joe's health as I do just the whole strategy, the timing. What that administration accomplished should have been a huge platform for victory.
Raise your hand if you heard President Biden was diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer. It's now in stage 4. Okay, everybody's heard this. I want to go around. There's sort of 2 schools of thought on this. And it's fine if you kind of are thinking about this in real time and aren't firmly in one camp over the other. But people are suspicious of whether or not this went undetected while he was president, whether he got tested, knew he had it, and his team knew, and it wasn't disclosed, versus him going for several years without being tested. I think his last test was 14 years ago, I believe. How do you guys think about that?
I mean, this is really tough to say. I think a lot of ordinary people, like a lot of ordinary men, go through points of denial and just not wanting to get preventative testing. I can speak having a medical background here. It is, for an ordinary guy, I could see that happening. Yes, believable. But like the leader of the country, I would think they would have medical care that would prompt them more that something is unusual about this. But I mean, ultimately, it is his decision, and it's a very personal decision. Yeah, I am confused about the whole thing because I feel like, especially if there was any kind of health decline, which I haven't kept up on all the news besides the mental acuity kind of things, like why he wouldn't at least get tested for things if something was not right. So I don't know, maybe I'm not that informed about what was leading up to that. It just seems like something's a little bit off to me. For an ordinary guy, yeah, I could totally see somebody not going in for testing because a lot of guys are like that. They think something's wrong and they don't want to deal with it. If they get the test in black and white that says it, they'll have to deal with it. But so much was at stake with him. It just sounds like an odd story.
I hear you on this balance of how normal people approach it and maybe you want to sweep it under the rug. But there was a lot at stake with it being him. Do you think he had a responsibility to get tested for stuff like that?
Yeah, I think he did because he's leading not only the country, but the party in a certain direction. And if you have facts like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, like she made a certain decision and she held off for a while because she knew she had cancer and she held off as long as possible. I thought that was a brave thing. And, there's a point where your personal health has to take priority.
How do you think about it, about kind of the timeline of his diagnosis?
Well, all I can say is that when I found out, when I was watching the news, my spidey senses were very much triggered. Like, this is not something new. But then that contrasts with the fact that my father was diagnosed with prostate cancer and it was extremely aggressive, but he was only at stage 3. And he did have some symptoms that he kind of just like repressed. But I know that a lot of men that have prostate cancer have no symptoms, right? So it's like really hard to know because like sometimes I do really trust my instincts and say, something is really fishy here because it does kind of seem like that. And then when I was like learning that he said he hadn't been tested or examined for like 10 years, I just thought that didn't really make a lot of sense because it's typically done at the annual physical for men. And so I don't know how that would not have happened. Like, is he trying to say he hasn't seen his primary care doctor for 10 years? Or I'm not really understanding that part of it. So I have a big question mark and it bothers me, definitely.
I just want to make a comment. He would actually have to refuse a recommendation from a doctor because the doctor would definitely have brought that up, especially the doctor of president. So anyway.
I'll ask you the same thing I asked Cece. Do you think he has more of a responsibility than your average Joe to get tested for something like this?
Yes, but I mean, I also don't want him to be held to a standard that no one else is going to be held to, right? So yes, I think it's responsible to do so. And I think the health of the president of the United States, especially moving forward with a new administration or a new 4-year period of time, is very critical. But I also don't want to hold him to a standard that Trump would never be held to.
Mm-hmm. What did you make of how the diagnosis was revealed?
I feel like with him being the president that he had to be checked over the years. There's no way he didn't get no kind of physical or anything. I kind of feel like the administration knew he had it, but just kept it under the rug. So I do have like a big question mark as to what really happened.
Mm-hmm. Be our first guy to weigh in.
So the cancer thing, I'm sad for him, but that is about the extent of my feelings about it. In a vacuum, it would be a much more significant issue, right? But I think it's completely overshadowed by the dementia thing. I can't be mad at him for not getting checked for cancer if, he's losing his mind, sort of. I'm more upset about people not intervening when he was starting to fail mentally than about the cancer thing. Like,
mm-hmm. Do you think it's possible then that they knew and it sort of extends into the physical?
I guess it's possible. I think it's unlikely, though, frankly. The story of him not getting checked, he's a headstrong guy. They've told him for years about his gaffes in public, and his response wasn't a normal politician of like, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. He just said, I make gaffes, right? That's who he was. So if they told him to get checked and he didn't want to get checked, he didn't get checked. And I would like him to have done better, right? Like brought up Ginsburg, right? I was much more frustrated with Ginsburg for not dealing with her health and bowing out when a reasonable replacement could be found and appointed instead of giving her slot to Trump. But, with Biden, I don't think I even have the opportunity to worry about that because I'm still wringing my hands over his dementia.
Okay. What do you make of it?
Did he know and when did he know it? That is the classic political Trump. And also, it's a classic political move anyway. You blame the victim. I don't like that. I don't appreciate that characterization. The King of England did not disclose exactly. We still don't know what type of cancer he still has. And you hear just rumor mill about that. We never found out exactly where or how severe Kate's was, although she's not heir to the throne directly. But it's interesting how our society is more like in your face about we have to know your private medical business. And, you're right. If he's losing the stuffing out of his mattress, prostate cancer is really just a blip on the radar in the grand scheme of things. So I don't like to see potential of a cover-up. It seems like there are too many instances with our party where we have people cover something up and then it's amplified big time.
And I'll go ahead and push you a bit on how I have others about he did intend to run for president again for a while and he would have been 86. Do you think he had more of a responsibility than another person to have gotten tested and disclosed to the American people?
Not me.
Tell me how you think about it.
I didn't question actually that there was some kind of cover up when I first saw it. My initial reaction was one human being to another, like, oh my gosh, I feel sorry that he's having to deal with this. This is a big thing, right? It is possible that he has known for a while, but he didn't find out until after he passed it on to Kamala. It is very possible that that's happened. I am someone who prefers to give him benefit of the doubt in that way. Whether or not he's been tested, it is common for men, along with blood work, like your normal yearly blood work, to have a PSA done. That's just thrown in there as part of it, that particular test. So his PSA level probably has been rising over the years. Maybe he's chosen not to deal with it for one reason or another. Do I think that all of his personal health information should be public? I don't necessarily believe that. I think he has a right to privacy like anybody else. If it is something regarding his health that will affect, if he was still in office and he was still going to be president, that will affect his ability to be president, that becomes a different story, right? But I do believe as a human being, he deserves to have a certain amount of privacy.
Mm-hmm. So it would have been a different case if maybe he was in office now or he did know about it while he was running.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, how do you think about it?
And I'll probably just echo some of the thoughts that have already been expressed, but I was really surprised to hear that he had gone so long without a prostate cancer screening, since it's a pretty routine part of care for, especially for an older male. And while it's ultimately a personal decision, in my mind, I thought at least while he was president or in any office really, that he would feel some sense of responsibility to ensure any way that he can that he was in good health and able to make good decisions.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Good.
Yeah, I think it's important as part of a postmortem looking back and talking within the Democratic family about how this occurred. I mean, I think that the people around him should have been aware and might have been aware. And again, as I mentioned earlier, his promise to run for one term, I really held him to that. While excited that he felt it necessary to run for a second term, we don't know the decisions that went into that. So, as part of the postmortem, I would feel that needs to be a discussion about what sort of advice the president was being given. But secondly, the way forward. Now, that's where I'm looking at. I mean, there should have been someone being groomed to step on in. And that's kind of where I am. My feelings about how this might have been disguised or something, I think that's more along the questioning of the decisions that went into play.
Mm-hmm. So a few of you are hitting on kind of the people who are surrounding him then and now. And we've parsed a little bit this idea of, for lack of a better term, a conspiracy of silence that has maybe surrounded him at various times, whether it's mental acuity, whether it's physical, but the possibility that there were sort of cover-ups or, not disclosing the full story to voters. I'm curious, who do you think ultimately takes the blame for that? And does that impact your trust for Democrats in general, for the party going forward?
I think all candidates do that to varying degrees. It's unfortunate that the Democrats always are caught with our proverbial pants down in that, and I hate that. Yes, it makes people trust us less. Anybody who thought, oh man, I should have voted for Kamala, now Trump's president. Oh, well, we dodged a bullet. Biden would have died in off. You can't keep doing that, but I think they all do it to varying degrees. Do I think it's wrong? Who covered it up? What I kept thinking about Biden was the people running his campaign, because Kamala Harris inherited them because it's just easier to take the campaign and just put it on her. She can physically and mentally do gymnastics around the things they wanted Biden to do. I keep thinking he was loyal to so many people on his staff and his advisors over decades and the people running his campaigns. I think if anybody could be blamed for putting him up, it's them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel a lack of trust, but I do feel anger with the party establishment, whoever that is, that we keep allowing this to happen. So we're called the Democratic Party, right? The whole idea here, people having the power or whatever, and the party has been plagued by credible accusations of thumb on the scale stuff. I mean, if you go back to 2016, Hillary and Bernie, the accusations were there that the people wanted, the more populist candidate, and the establishment candidate was promoted anyway. I don't disagree with it. I'm just saying, in the context of having accusations like that, the people in the party should be making sure that the rank and file members like myself are well informed, right? I think there's a burden to tell us what's going on. Simple things like Biden's not doing so good and you might want to be thinking about a replacement. I don't think they should be making that decision for us. Mm-hmm. And I'm still astounded that he could get as far downward as he got between 2020 and 2024 without anybody saying a word to us or anything. It blows my mind. And I'm angry, not mistrustful, just angry.
Anybody else care to weigh in on that? This idea of the people around who may have been covering up, does that make you trust the Democratic Party less?
Makes me question new leadership.
I think for myself as well, because it bodes terribly for future decision making. And I think it also impacted the number of people who chose not to vote because they just felt uncomfortable with everything and everyone. So I think in order to capture particularly the non-voters and probably registered Democratic non-voters, because there was many of them, probably got the ick from this whole process. And that's part of why so many people felt disenfranchised. So for me, I'm bothered by it. And then I'm thinking of moving forward, how to regain trust and how to engage those people who felt disenfranchised would be the honesty about the situation.
Anybody want to share any thoughts off the top that President Biden was diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer just a few weeks ago? Go ahead.
I was just kind of blown away that they just now discovered it. I mean, I get blood tests twice a year just for health, and they can check a PSA level just like that. And this is the president of the United States, and he hasn't had a PSA test, I think, since 2016.
I think 2014, I think is
2014. Yes, right. So I thought that was really just didn't make any sense. I was devastated to hear the news, and all thoughts and prayers to his family and for all that. But I couldn't swallow that. That's crazy. I've been having PSA tests done every year for the last 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy's the president of the United States with the best healthcare and never had that. Now, PSA is not going to always tell you for sure. There could be some other things, but I just can't believe all of a sudden, man, they just figured out he's got this degree of cancer and it was never diagnosed.
You said it didn't add up for you. Tell me why.
Kind of back to what Bruce said. I mean, I get, like he does, I get blood tests. I get them twice a year. And I'm surprised that the president of the United States, who has the best healthcare in the world, it just didn't add up. Because they also say that he had a full physical in 2023, right? Which include all the testing and stuff like that. So the timing was just kind of weird. And, as a man or whatever, you really want to be on top of what's going on with your PSA.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it might not have been shared?
Yes, I kind of feel that way now. And, we talk about what was going on within the team. I'm sure they probably knew what was going on with Joe.
What were you going to add?
Okay. And I just saw this on The View. So they were saying after a certain age that they don't check for that anymore. But that was such a huge oversight that I was kind of shocked by that. I don't know how that went undetected. And I don't want to think that it's like a cover up or anything. I'm just very disappointed that our commander in chief wasn't, checked thoroughly. If that's the case, I'm very disappointed.
Mm-hmm. What were you going to add?
And I have heard that too. After 70, you don't check for it. But I was listening to a doctor online and he's like, this is crazy. Like, if you're the president, you should have the best medical staff. That 70 years is based off of, men only live to 72 on average. So like, you're not going to die from prostate cancer. You're going to die with prostate cancer. But once you're already like 70 years old, the chance of living to 80 is much higher because that 72 number comes from averages. Like people die in car accidents at young ages and it brings it down. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to not get tested.
Mm-hmm. And kind of to this point about not getting tested, whether it was his choice not to get tested or the White House didn't test him, if that's the case, if he really did not get tested, do you think, and this, I'll open this up to the whole group, I'm curious if you guys think that he had more of a responsibility to get tested or not than just sort of an average person? Or do you think that he is also a person and can make his own medical decisions and doesn't need to disclose? Go ahead.
I think that he has an obligation to get tested. I don't believe he did not get tested. It's a simple blood test. You don't even have to do anything different. You're going to test for everything under the sun. You just turn on a marker and they test it. It's not like anything controversial.
Who thinks that he has been tested more recently and knew that this diagnosis was coming? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 8. Anybody else want to weigh in on some of these ideas?
Sometimes people just get afraid and they don't want to know. Maybe he did get tested. Maybe he didn't want to know if it was still there or it had come back. Because once you have it, there is always a possibility that it'll come back. And it may not come back in the same form, but it comes back in something different. That's the way I was thinking. I'm trying to think, why would he not get tested? I do believe he did. But whether he wanted to know the results, that's a different thing.
But do you think he should be able to kind of make those decisions as just a private citizen, or do you think he has more accountability to get tested and release the results?
Well, as the leader of the country, yes, he does have an obligation to do that, because it's not fair to us if he knows this type of information and he's not revealing it, because that helps us to make our mind up as to what we need to be bracing for later on. It's kind of like a selfish move if he knew and didn't tell it for whatever reason. Sometimes people just don't want to embrace it and talk about it. Okay, yeah, I got it. But, because it's the whole world, everybody, it's a lot. And I know he's been a public figure pretty much all of his life, and he should be able to handle that. But, hey, people just get strange when it comes down to health.
Could have been associated with the campaign too, where they didn't want any bad news. I mean, we're all speculating. That could have been part of it. The objective was to keep him as strong looking as possible throughout the campaign.
And how do you think about all of it?
I think that he knew, and he just wanted to keep it private. And with all what was going on with the campaign and everything, he just didn't want anyone to know. It was a stage 4 now. Then, he has to let people know. And so that's why he disclosed it.
Do you think that that's kind of his personal right for his own health, or do you think that he had an obligation to share that earlier?
When he was president, I believe, yes, he should have let people know. But I just feel so bad for him. But now, yeah, he should have let people know what was going on with his health. Definitely.
How do you think about it?
Like, I felt like he has an obligation to tell the people, so we could prepare what to embrace in the coming future, but also sensitive spot. Like, no one ever wants to release anything so personal. Bad enough you dealing with it mentally, emotionally, physically, and now I have to share with the masses of the world. And it's like, how much more can I embrace right now? So that's why I think he probably didn't want to disclose it.
How do you think about it?
I think if he knew during his presidency, or he intentionally avoided getting certain tests during his presidency, that he is obligated to take optimal care of his health, especially when it's offered like that. Follow recommendations of your provider based on age and what's appropriate for you. But if, let's say, because it's all speculation, let's say he really, truly, for whatever reason, for however it didn't happen, he didn't know until after Trump was in office. Then he got tested. Then he found out. I think he has, as a private citizen, the right to make decisions and share information to his comfort level.
Okay, guys. Well, we're at time. You've been an excellent group. I appreciate everybody being so transparent, so respectful. Not always the case in political discussions these days. So I thank you for that. And I also appreciate you digging into these nuances with me kind of in real time, thinking stuff through. So I appreciate you playing along with that. And in addition to my appreciation, the focus group facility will be in touch with a more concrete form of my appreciation that you all can actually spend. So please enjoy that. But you also have my thanks, and good luck to us all. Good luck to everybody. Take care, guys.
Hey guys, it's Tim and Sarah. We're here with my frenemy, John Lovett from Love It or Leave It. June is Pride Month, and we're going to be live in D.C. on June 6th for World Pride for a very special live show fundraiser featuring the three of us, plus some gay special guests.
Crooked and the Bulwark will be donating the proceeds from this fundraiser to the Immigrant Defenders Law Center to support Andre Romero, the makeup artist who the Trump administration wrongly disappeared to El Salvador and who is currently being held in Sakat.
Go to crooked.com/events.
And we will see you all on June 6th.